My name is Michael Mark. I am our CSLB board chair. First off, if we could all please stand, I invite Vice Chair Miguel Galarza to lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now note for the record that Mary Tyker, Jacob Lopez, and Alan Guy have approved absences for today. We're going to do a roll call. Robin, please confirm board member attendance and call roll.
Michael Mark,
Here.
Joel Horton,
Here.
Brendan Cobos, here. Miguel Galarza,
Here.
Amanda Gaio,
Here.
Alan Guy has an excused absence, Jacob Lopez has an excused absence, Diana Lowe,
Here.
Henry Nett,
Here.
Steve Pinelli,
Here.
Joseph Preciado,
Here.
Jim Ruane,
Here.
Thomas Ruiz,
Here.
Harry Tiger has an excused absence. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Rob. And also joining us is CSLB from CSLB staff is Registrar David Vogt, Chief of Licensing Carol Gagnon, Chief of Enforcement Steve Grove, Chief of Public Affairs Catherine White, Chief of Legislation Rebecca May, Special Projects Manager Mike Jaminski, and Executive Office Analysis Rob Williams, and David from Public Affairs Office. From DCA present is Legal Counsel John Kennedy. Moving on to item B of our agenda, public comment for items not on the agenda, which is for public comment and request agenda items for a future meeting. The board values input as part of our consumer protection mission to allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business. Today, I'm limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments do not involve an item on today's agenda, this will be the time where you can make them. If you have comments on one of our agenda items, we encourage you to wait until we get to that item. We'll give you an opportunity to make your comments when that item is called. We ask that your public comment relate to the agenda items currently before the board. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and board members are not permitted to act on any item not on today's agenda. Secondly, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing this issue on the agenda for a future meeting. Finally, if we have an application, a complaint, or disciplinary charges pending by the board, we ask that you do not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That's because board members may be the judges on your matter and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record of the case. So first off, we're going to ask if any board members would like to add a future agenda item. Seeing none, is there any comments from the public on items that are not on the agenda today? It's your time for any public comment that is not on the agenda. Seeing none, we're going to move on. So now we're on agenda item C, presentation of certificates of recognition. And then right now there is no certificates today. Are there any public comments before we move to the agenda? I think what we'll do is at least take this time to recognize a few extra comments. We have David Chu in the audience today. He was a supervisor and 44-year member of staff of Contractors State License Board. He was a supervisor for enforcement for the entirety of Bay Area. So again, thank you, David, for coming today. And lastly, I want to make sure I recognize Jacob Lopez, who was reappointed to a 4-year term, as well as Joseph reappointed. So with that, we're going to move on to item D, our executive report. This begins with starting with item D1, review and possible improvement of board meeting minutes and committee meeting summaries. The next four agenda items include board approval meeting minutes and summaries. You will now see on the agenda, there are 4 meeting minutes and summary reports for approval. If there are no objections, I will introduce all of these 4 agenda items and then invite board member comments or questions on whether there are any suggested edits of these minutes and summaries. If there are any board members or public concerns regarding an item, there will be a time to discuss and vote on that item separately. If there are no concerns or comments regarding the minutes and summary reports, we'll give these 4 agenda items 1 vote. So the minutes and summaries of the approvals are A, March 14th, 2025 board meeting minutes. April 11th, 2025, Executive Enforcement and Legislative Teleconference Committee meeting summary. The April 11th, 2025 special meeting board meeting minutes. And the May 15th Licensing and Public Affairs Teleconference Committee meeting summary. These meetings and summaries are in your packets between pages 11 and 80. Do any of the board members have any comments or edits to the minutes or summaries that I mentioned? Seeing none. Is there any public comments on the minutes? None. So again, we're looking for one motion to approve all of the 4 minutes that was listed. Do I have a motion to approve the March 14th, 2025 board meeting minutes, the April 11th, 2025 Executive Enforcement and Legislative Teleconference Committee meeting summary, the April 11th, 2025 special meeting minutes, and the May 15th, 2025 Licensing and Public Affairs Committee minutes? We have a motion. So moved, Rodney Covert. Second from Steve Pinelli. Is there any public comment? Any board member comment? Robin, please call roll.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Joel Barton,
Aye.
Roger Kubus,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Amanda Guy,
Aye.
Alan Guy has an excused absence, Jacob Lopez has an excused absence, Diana Love,
Aye.
Henry Nutt,
Aye.
Steve Pinelli,
Aye.
Joseph Cristiano,
Aye.
Henry Wade,
Aye.
Thomas Ruiz,
Aye.
Mary Tiger has an excused absent, motion passes.
Thank you, Robin. Next item, we're going to be agenda item D2. Review, discussion, and action on nominations, committee recommendations for election of the 2025-2026 board officers. On April 22nd, 2025, register vote announced that I had appointed past board chairs Diana Love and Mary Tykert for the 2-person nomination committee for the recommendation of a slate of officers at today's June 13th, 2025 board meeting. The purpose of the committee is to recommend to the board a slate of officers for the positions of chair, vice chair, and board secretary for the next fiscal year, which starts July 1st. I will now turn the floor over to past chair Diana Love to announce the slate of officers.
Thank you, Chair Mark. Board member Mary Tykert and I have enjoyed serving on the 2025 nomination committee. Thank you for that appointment. We consider the request of our fellow board members for the 3 positions that will be open on the board. The recommendation is as following: Miguel Garza for chair, Alan Guy for vice chair, Rodney Cobos for secretary. With that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that and appreciate all of yourselves and Mary's hard work on that. For each officer position, I will state the nominated candidate that the committee recommends. Then I'll ask if there's a motion from the floor on any other individual with the board members who would like to be nominated for that position. We do not need a motion for the person that have already been recommended by Mary and Diana, only if there's an alternate recommendation. All 4 nominations, if there are any, will require a second. Candidates will then be given up to 2 minutes to make a statement and describe their qualifications for the position. Then we'll take a roll call for each nominee. If there's only 1 nominee for the position, members can vote by yes, no, or abstain. If there are multiple candidates for a position, that board members will vote in alphabetical order by stating the name of the candidate they support. If there are multiple candidates, the first nominee to be voted by a majority of the board members will win that officer's position. I will now proceed to nominations for office of the chair. The committee recommended nomination of Miguel Galarza. Are there any other nominations for the office of chair from the floor? Seeing none, that there are no other nominations, I will now close the nominations for the office of chair. Thank you, Miguel Galarza. I now invite Miguel Galarza to make a statement.
Thank you. So it's been about 35 years that I've been a licensed contractor. And the organization that allowed me to be a contractor has certainly changed my life. And has certainly changed the life of my family and given me opportunities to take care of my family. And I'm honored to have been considered, honored to be nominated. And I think it's important that as an individual who worked in the industry for many, many years before I got my license, to be able to give back to the community that has given me so much is an honor. To lead this great organization, to follow chairs like Michael, Diana, like Mary. All of them have been great leaders, and I certainly hope to contribute just a little bit to the legacy that they've set for, and to continue to have an organization that makes a difference for our community, for the citizens of California, and I'm honored again to be considered for your vote. Thank you.
Miguel. Thank you for those comments. So is there any comments from other board members? None. Seeing none. Is there any comments from the public? Seeing none. Do we have a nomination of Miguel Galarza as chair? We have a motion. So moved by Rodney Cobos. Is there a second? Second by Steve Pinelli. With that, please call roll, Robin.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Joel Gordon,
Yes.
Rodney Cobos.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza. Alan Guy has an excused absence. Jacob Lopez has excused absence. Diana Love. Henry Nutt.
Aye.
Steve Benelli.
Aye.
Joseph Feliciano.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Thomas Ruiz.
Aye.
Mary Tiger has an excused absence. Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is the nomination of office of vice chair. The committee recommended nomination of Alan Guy. Are there any other nominations for the office of vice chair from the floor? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? With that, seeing none. There being no other nominations, I will now close the nominations for the office of vice chair. Alan Guy is obviously has excused absence today, is not available to make comment. Board member Love, do you have a comment to read on Mr. Guy's behalf?
I do, thank you, Chair. Due to an unavoidable scheduling conflict, Alan says, I regret to inform you that I will not be able to attend today's meeting. I appreciate your understanding in this matter. Over the past 4 years, I have had the privilege of serving on every committee and as the board secretary. This experience has been truly rewarding, and I believe it has added significant value to our board's work. I am truly honored to be nominated for the vice chair position, and I am eagerly looking forward to the opportunity to serve in this role.
Thank you, Diana. Are there any comments from the board? Seeing none. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none. Do we have a motion for nomination of Alan Guy as vice chair?
So
Motion by Steve Pinelli, second by Jim Rume. Robin, please call roll.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Joel Barton,
Aye.
Rodney Cobos.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Amanda Gallo.
Aye.
Alan Guy has an excused absence. Jacob Lopez has an excused absence. Diana Love.
Aye.
Henry Nutt.
Aye.
Steve Benelli.
Aye.
Joseph Feliciano.
Aye.
Jim Ruane. Thomas Ruiz.
Aye.
Mary Tiger has an excused absence. Motion passes.
Thank you, Robin. Finally, is the nomination of office of the secretary. The committee recommended nomination of Rodney Kobos. Are there any other nominations for the office of secretary from the floor? If none, I'll now, any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? With that, I will close nominations for office of secretary. I now invite Rodney Kobos to make a statement.
Just 2 minutes.
As long as you need.
First off, I just want to thank Diane and Mary for their consideration of me serving as recording secretary. Been a union member with the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters for over 27 years. And what just being a member and being an officer of a local union and a district council, and what it has done for me and my family, and opening up opportunities to serve on this board and serve with fellow board members. And I really appreciate everyone's support and staff, and serving as chair of the enforcement committee. Steve guided me along the way, and Robin and everybody else, Dave, everybody on staff. I'm just really appreciative and grateful for the opportunity to serve as a person. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Rodney. Great statement. Are there any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, can I get a motion for Rodney Kobos as secretary?
Motion.
Second. Motion, looks like Thomas Ruiz, second by Henry Nutt. Robin, please call roll.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Joel Hart.
Aye.
Jacobus,
Aye.
Diego Garza,
Aye.
Andy Gaio. Alan Guy has an excused absence, Jacob Lopez has an excused absence, Diana Love.
Aye.
Henry Nutt,
Aye.
Steve Benelli,
Yes.
Joseph Preciado,
Aye.
Jim Bowie,
Aye.
Thomas Ruiz,
Aye.
Mary Tucker has an excused absence. Motion passes.
Thank you, Robin. Congratulations to all our new officers. Serving everyone in the upcoming year. With that, this is a little bit of time for myself to reflect. This is my last meeting as board chair. I appreciate everyone on the board and everyone's confidence in me as I served this past year. I felt we've had a lot of great accomplishments, bringing industry and the board together. We've had quite a few meetings. One of the meetings in particular was with the state building trades and compliance officers, really trying to tackle that underground economy. So that has been one of my main focuses as board chair, is really focusing on the underground economy and where CSLB can be partners with the public and industry. And for that, I really appreciate the hard work that Registered Vote has done in the past year with myself. And I continue to serve look forward to the rest of my term as a board member and being a past chair. So with that, we'll move on. Thank you. So next up, item D3, Registrar's report. The first item on the Registrar's report is update and discussion on Southern California wildfire response. There is a detailed breakdown of the disaster recovery efforts CSLB has engaged in on page 85 of your packet. I will now turn it over to Registered Vote.
Thank you, Chair Mark. Michael Chemensky and I have attended a weekly rebuilding and long-term recovery task force meeting, and this comprised representatives from the governor's office, other state agencies, but primarily with city and county government in LA. And it focuses on what can we do to help these wildfire survivors with their debris removal and rebuilding needs. What can we do to protect them when they're into a contract? We want to have a deterrent effect for unlicensed contractors and predatory conduct. We took a step back and we looked at the Paradise Fire. And what we determined is that we had received 392 consumer complaints. The goal for the LA fire rebuild is to not receive complaints. We want to make sure consumers make an informed decision and that we don't have the unscrupulous contractors out seeking the work. And so it's really been a group effort. I just want to thank all CSLB staff for the part that they have played. I have requested, and it's been accepted, I'll be on the agenda for the meeting next week to talk about the successes, what we're currently doing, and what our future plans are. But today, I've asked the division chiefs to briefly discuss their highlights, so what they've accomplished and what they're planning for the future. I'm going to start with Chief of Public Affairs, Catherine Weiss. If you give us an update, thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. One of the big things that we did, Dave was talking about the debris removal. That was a big part of the process, and we were working on the updating the debris removal fastbacks, which is describing the appropriate classifications. We kept updating that throughout the process as we were working with LA County, and we got to a point where they were like, we want to know how many contractors are eligible to do this work, and so our staff conducted a survey of all the eligible contractors, and we're able to get about 100 of them that were listed on our website for homeowners to go to and to find their contractor for their debris removal. So that was a big thing that we did with that. We also translated that into 5 different languages, so it'd be accessible to the entire community there. And that's one big thing we've been doing throughout this entire process is we're noticing different publications that need to be updated for this. We're updating publications, we're getting them translated into different languages. And then on that same note, we had a Spanish webinar for debris removal to reach that community in addition to an English webinar. And we also worked with 2 legislative offices, the offices of Assemblywoman Jackie Irwin and John Harabedian, to do some debris removal and rebuilding webinars early in April. And that was really effective. And we got to dozens of different consumers in those areas in both Palisades and Eden. As well, we also have been working on the Disaster Help Center updates and making sure that that page has been updated with the latest information. Right now has a lot of information on debris removal, and as we're getting past the debris removal part of the process in the coming weeks, we'll be updating that with recovery and rebuilding information as well. The only other thing, and this is something that Steve might be touching upon as well, is we've been working with SWIFT to create a flyer to kind of tell the general public what we're doing in the disaster areas. That we're here to do these compliance operations to ensure all the contractors out there are in compliance, and we just want to make sure the public understands that. And so that's a big part of this flyer. And I guess if you're okay with that, Dave, I'll turn it over to Steve, who wants to talk a little bit more about what his staff has been doing now.
Actually, I was going to go to our Chief of Licensing, Carol Gagnon. What are we doing to help our licensees maintain their licensure, and also if someone's qualified to obtain a license, how are we prioritizing that? Carol?
So what we're doing is the governor issued an executive order actually to allow licensees in the zip codes in that area to defer their renewal fee for a year. Go ahead and renew so they can keep working, but that way if they've lost their home or they lost their business or something, they've got a little while to make enough to cover that fee. We've had 64 people so far take advantage of that deferred renewal. It ends at the end of June, so we may get a few more. And then we're going to work with them to help them to make sure their address is up to date, things like that, so we can get their stuff to them. Another thing that we've done is that LA County had listed 4 classifications that are allowed to do debris removal, but required all of them to get a hazardous substance removal certification. And so we've been prioritizing hazardous substance removal applications since February. We've had 265 people apply to take and get that certification. So far, 72 of them have made it all the way through the process and been able to add that certification to their license. The rest are still working their way through the process, the exams and everything. We are still seeing a few each week that come through, and 265 is a huge amount. We normally get 12 applications a month. So this is a lot more than we normally see for hazardous substance removal, but it's really helping the consumers to be able to get somebody who's got the training, who has the experience, who knows about wearing the personal protective equipment and protecting their employees to go out there and remove the debris from the area. And then also another thing is that we worked with Rebecca, who worked with the legislature, to create the bill SB 641 that you're going to hear about later. And so once that actually goes into effect, then we're going to be working on some of our exams, which again, I'll tell you about later. You've got this coming up to deal with that. So that's our big part.
All right, thank you, Carol. Next up, Steve Brough, Chief of Enforcement.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everybody. So we have about 27 investigators in our SWIFT unit, which, it's not a lot. So we've been really stretched to the max since these fires started back in January. After these fires occurred, the first thing that we do is we wait until the area is opened up to the public to get in there. and we go post our warning signs. We have two different warning signs that we use. One warns unlicensed contractors, but it's a felony to contract without a license in a declared disaster area. And the other one warns the public not to hire unlicensed contractors. So we put a real strong effort into deterrence. You know, like Dave was saying before, we don't want these consumers, these victims of the fire to be victimized again by an unlicensed contractor, which happens. We've seen it in Paradise and all the fires that we've dealt with. So we've been out there sweeping both fire areas twice a week with either just with our staff or combined with district attorney investigators, or in cooperation with the Labor Enforcement Task Force, which we're part of, which consists of Cal OSHA, DLSE, and EPD. So we've been doing these sweeps, like I said, twice a week in both fire areas. So real strong presence. And because of that, we've actually only found 3 unlicensed contractors since March when we started doing this. And all 3 of those unlicensed contractors were actually working on homes that weren't damaged by the fire. So this effort is paying off. And what we're transitioning real soon from the debris cleanup to rebuilding. And in fact, the first rebuild permit was issued on April 9th. So it's been quite a process getting all the toxic substance removed, and then now the debris, and then now we're transitioning into rebuilding. We're working very closely with the LA County District Attorney's Office. We've actually found a sting property, and we're going to be conducting an undercover sting operation in the very near future. And why am I talking about that right now? Because we want to deter this from happening. Okay, so hopefully nobody will show up at this house. That would be a great outcome. But we'll see what happens. Our SWIFT staff, who, as I mentioned, 27 investigators cover the entire state, they spent mostly our Southern SWIFT unit and some volunteers from some of our other investigation centers, but mostly our SWIFT unit, staffed 2 disaster recovery centers down in the burn areas from January 15 till April 30th. 2 centers, 2 staff a day at each one for about 6 days per week. So as you can imagine, that was a real impact on our resources. But we did that, and we were still able to respond to leads that came in and to the burn sweep operation. So yeah, I think that's covers my.
Right. Thank you, Steve. Now we have Rebecca Mayer, Chief of Legislation, and she has good news regarding the budget.
Okay.
So not to go into the budget, but just about the reimbursable for the disaster response.
Well, I was going to provide an update on 641.
Okay.
So the Senate bill, as Carol had noted, our office has been working with Senator Ashby's office on SB 641. The bill provides that only licensees holding an A engineering contractor's license, a B general building contractor's license, or both C12 earthwork and paving and C21 building moving/demolition classifications can engage in debris removal, provided they have passed the hazardous substance certification examination and comply with HAZWOPER requirements. The bill also authorizes the registrar to determine if additional classifications can provide debris removal during a state of emergency on a case-by-case basis and require additional hazardous substance certification if applicable. This bill contains an urgency clause, meaning it'll become law immediately upon the governor's signature, and I anticipate it'll make its way to the governor's desk by September or so. This bill is not on today's agenda because the board voted to support it at the March meeting and no further action is needed.
Stacy report that we recovered about $600,000 of our expenses. I thought that was real positive. We have a budget manager, Stacy Paul, and she's very effectively in identifying additional expenses that the board's incurred in responding to the wildfire. But we can confirm that later then? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. And the last thing I have is regarding our next board meeting. The Nevada Contractors Board has requested a joint meeting in September, but ultimately it's up to our incoming chair when that board meeting will be held or helping. Now we conclude the rest of the update.
Thank you. Is there any board member comment on the registrar update? Well, Barton.
I'd like to make one comment, Mr. Chair, regarding the response to the wildfires. I went last Saturday, I went on a LA Firehogs run to benefit fallen firefighters and their widows and orphans. And we started in Hollywood and cruised down Sunset from Hollywood all the way down to PCH and then up around Calabasas. So we saw the devastation of the fires. And the one thing that stood out were the signs, believe it or not. I saw, I think about 10 going on down there. But and to verify the importance too of the HAZWOPER training and the pickup, because you could smell, I was a firefighter for 10 years prior to becoming an electrician, and you can still smell the toxic air, the burn there, you know, and all the detrimental things that go along with the removal. So just want to thank you for your work, because again, those signs really stood out. I saw them like, well, that's nice. Well, thank you.
Any other board member comment? Thank you, Joel. Yeah, I will say after our last board meeting, or before our last board meeting, we as a board took a tour of the fires, and it was detrimental, and the devastation was unheard of in the LA County area. And I appreciate as we took a tour of the PRC, Disaster Recovery Center, the amount of consumers who heard more about the proper things to look out for, and look out for unlicensed contractors. It was great. So appreciate staff and everyone's hard work and making sure that the consumers of California are being protected. Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to item D4. We are now on page 89 of our packet, as some of our staff were unable to travel for this meeting. Budget manager Stacy Paul is watching us from headquarters today. So for this item, I'll turn it over to Stacy's manager, legislative chief, Rebecca May.
So good morning, board chair. Good morning, members. The budget update begins on page 89 of your packet with budget summary. This page summarizes the budget and projected expenditures for our current fiscal year 24-25. With an authorized budget of 80.8 million, the final year-end projections show 96 million in revenue, 80 million in board expenditures, and 6.3 million in mandatory external costs. On page 90, the first chart details expenditures through April. As noted, we've spent roughly 82% of our authorized budget. The chart below shows our revenue performance through April. Overall, I'm happy to report we've collected nearly 90 million, which is a 2.7% increase compared to the previous year. Page 91 shows the board's fund condition projection through budget year 25-26. The middle column is the current fiscal year, showing our beginning fund balance at 41.7 million. If year-end projections are realized, we should increase our reserves by year-end to over 50 million, which equates to over 6 months of reserves. On page 92, the chart shown represents the Construction Management Education Account Fund condition. As you can see, the fund is healthy and continues to receive a steady increase in annual donations. Lastly, let me briefly touch on the statistical summary provided on pages 93, 94, and 95. Through April, there have been increases in nearly every area, from original applications received to new licenses issued. Renewals are also slightly up, with a 1.6% increase over 2 years ago. So this concludes the budget update. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the months in reserves of 6.7 months. That's amazing. Repeat myself on every board meeting. It's been growing and growing. When I first joined the board, we were down to, I think, 1 month reserve. So great work, Stacy. Is there any other board member comment? Any public comment? With that, we'll move on to administrative update. We are now on page 99 of the packet. Our division chief, Ingrid Kritzkowski, is also back at headquarters. So for this item, I'll turn it over to Special Projects Manager Mike Jaminski.
Good morning. Thank you to our members. The administration update begins on page 99. As you know, the administrative division handles personnel, contracts, and facilities. So you've got your personnel transactions here on page 99. And with all those transactions at the bottom of the page, you'll note that we have averaged 26 vacancies out of 125 staff, which is really just a 6% vacancy rate, which is fantastic. Normally the number is usually around 10%. So we keep our building staffed, which is fantastic for serving the public and contractors. If you move to the next page, we reinitiated what we call the Career Development and Mentoring Program Steering Committee. I believe it disbanded shortly when COVID began. We're pleased that a few years later put it back together. This is a team of expert staff and leaders who work with each division to identify training needs and ways we can improve onboarding of new staff that come in and make sure everybody's trained at the same level and work on ways to improve each division. In the middle of the page there on page 100, we're doing our third installment of the career consulting class. Basically, how do you interview for a state job, how to fill out the application and then do it effectively, and work on recruitment staff to keep that vacancy rate low. And then finally, you'll hear more about this in the information technology update, but the transition from IWAS to EDMS, we do like our acronyms here in the state. IWAS was a program that we used for decades. It's old, very, very old. It's no longer being serviced. And it's the program that houses all of our licensing documents. And it houses them as pictures, as old photographs, and old software. There was a lot of work over about a year to transition all of those photographs of documents to PDF. And that affects the administrative unit because that unit scans every single licensing document that comes in, thousands of pieces of paper a day, and is now learning a whole new software and they're doing a great job. So you'll hear more about that in the IT update. And that is the end of the administrative updates. Thank you.
Great. Is there any board member comment? The public comment? I do want to highlight something on page 102. The study, and I think, I'm not sure if the enforcement will have a kind of update, but I appreciate the update on the study. That was something that was very important to me as a board member and the consumer study. So I know we reported that at our last meeting, I believe, but again, California State, CSU Sacramento is performing the study on enforcement, going through the guidelines, and in the end, it's supposed to help improve our complaint flow as ideally. So that's all. The Registrar, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's been some hit and misses on that. Where it's at now, it's just final approval with, I guess, general services line, the DCA, and I think that we're looking at July 1st rollout date.
That's right.
6 months to complete it. But we're real excited about it because what we've done is we have had meetings with Sac State, the research department, and we have data that's available that will be of assistance to determining just how large the extent of unlicensed practice is in the state. That's what we're going to be taking a look at. How much unlicensed practice is there out there? How much of it relates to the wildfire disaster response? And what are the resource needs to effectively address it? So the plan is all in place. The goal was for it to begin July 1. And then hopefully, Mike, was it like 6 months, I think?
Yeah, I didn't highlight it because it feels like the contract part has been moving at a glacier pace.
And I just wanted to make sure we're providing an update to the public because it's something that we've been talking about, and it's nothing to do with us trying to just hold it. We're trying to move as fast as possible as the contractors device.
Yeah, it's a matter of balancing the fact that we're contracting with another state agency versus the private agency, public bidding, all the fun contracting stuff. But the important part is, David said, there's not been a reliable study that I'm aware of that actually measures the underground economy as it relates to construction or unlicensed practice. How many unlicensed contractors are there? This will hopefully get us towards that number.
Sure, and then at that point, we will better understand, do we have the enforcement personnel
Yeah.
needed? Do we need to hire more? So I appreciate keeping on track on this study and thank you, David, for that update. With that, any other board comment? We'll move on to IT update. Item D6. We are now on page 105 of the packet. The board's IT advisory committee member, Henry Nutt, will provide today's IT update. Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Mark. Good morning, everyone. I'm Henry Nutt, third member of the board's IT advisory committee, and I'm pleased to present the IT update meeting today. The update begins on page 105 of your packet. At the March meeting, we informed you about the exciting ongoing project to convert 24 million licensee application documents to PDF, develop a new software to improve staff handling and processing them. This required a contract with a software developer designed to design a software interface so CSLB staff can process documents quicker and easier than ever before. It was a collaborative effort that took nearly a year. We're pleased to report that the system was successfully launched in the first week of May 2021. Staff have all trained on the new system and report positive results. The new system is called Enterprise Document Management System, or EDMS, as Staff Mike mentioned, and has successfully processed over 43,000 transactions and issued 987 license numbers. The project has been a great success. The packet also touches on the board's plan to transition an entirely paper-based contract license application to an online process for sole ownership contractors. Online applications for corporate contractors will come later. The IT division reports that the vendor developer is 84% complete in building the project, and we anticipate a late summer, early fall release date for the new system. That is it for the IT update. Back to you.
Great job. Any board member comment? Any public comment? Seeing none. With that, let's move on to the committee updates, beginning with item E on page 109 of the meeting materials. So E, legislation, leading us through the legislation portion of our meeting as legislation committee chair, Joel Barton. Joel, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Chair Mark. I am Joel Barton, Chair of Legislative Committee. We have a long agenda today, but I am confident we can move quickly through our legislative items. Analysis for each bill are in the board packet, and you each have a folder with copies of the bills at your station. I will provide the status of each bill, and staff will provide a brief summary of the bill and a recommendation for us to consider. While we have lots of bills to discuss, each one has been reviewed at least once, either at the March board meeting or the April legislative committee meeting. The agenda allows us to take action on any of these bills, but there are several where staff recommends no action, which should hopefully move the agenda along faster. Let's get started with board-sponsored bills. Item 1A is AB 521, Carrillo. An analysis of this bill can be found on the board packet on page 111. AB 521 is currently pending the Senate Judiciary Committee. For this bill, I'm going to ask John Ken Esquire to provide an update on the bill.
Good morning. Thank you, Member Barton. AB 521 is a bill that I'm sure the board recalls that clarifies CSLB is not responsible for legal fees in civil actions that are filed involving cash deposits from contractors made to the board. The board voted to sponsor this bill, which has not been amended since its vote to support in December of 2024. Given the sponsorship and support already for the bill, staff recommends no action. Hopefully, back to you for comments from the board or the public.
Thank you, Council Ken. Is there any board member comments on this bill? Seeing no further board member comments or questions, let's take public comment. Are there any members of the public wanting to comment on AB 521? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on this bill?
Motion. There is no need for a motion. We recommended no action unless the board seeks to.
Thank you, sir. The Robin, no roll call necessary. Thank you, Council Ken. All right, thank you. Now moving on to item 1B, AB 559 Berman. An analysis for this bill can be found in the board packet on page 113. AB 521 is currently pending the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. Chief May, can you provide a brief update?
Thank you, Member Barton. AB 559 includes accessory dwelling units or ADUs in the definition of home improvement and increases penalties for violations of progress payment rules. The board voted to sponsor this bill at the December 2024 board meeting, and AB 559 has not been substantively amended since it was introduced. Because CSLB has already lent its sponsorship and support to this measure, staff recommend the board take no action on this bill today.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on AB 559? Seeing no further board member comments or questions, let's take public comment. Are there any members of the public wanting to comment on AB 559? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on this bill?
Again, no need.
Thank you, Council Kenneth. Then required. Thank you. Now moving on to item 1C, SB 291 Grayson. An analysis for this bill can be found in the board packet off page 116. SB 291 is currently pending the Assembly Business and Professions Committee. Chief May, can you provide a brief update?
Thank you, Member Park. So unlike the previous two bills, this bill has been amended. However, staff recommend the board take no action today. As you may remember, this bill would have authorized an exemption to workers' compensation requirements for licensees meeting certain conditions and increased penalties for falsely claiming an exemption. The bill also moved up the start of workers' compensation for all by 1 year from January 1, 2028 to January 1, 2027. The amendments removed the exemption provisions and the earlier start date for workers' comp for all, but it maintained the enhanced penalties for filing a false exemption. The bill reinforces the legislature's direction in CSLB's sunset extension bill, requiring CSLB to determine an evidence-based process and procedure to establish an applicant or licensee does not have employees and is eligible for an exemption, and to report our findings to the legislature by January 1, 2027. So the amendments to this bill do not change current law, which would require workers' comp for all starting in 2028. Further, the amendments do not alter or extend the existing exemption available to licensees that will expire on January 1, 2028, when workers' compensation for all kicks in. While the amendments pare back CSLB's original sponsored language, the bill maintains increased penalties for filing a false workers' comp exemption, a key provision to protecting workers and discouraging cheating. The bill also does not prevent CSLB from pursuing an exemption in the future, but reinforces the legislature's prior direction for the board to identify an evidence-based process for determining eligibility first. This can be done by convening a workers' comp advisory committee meeting and inviting staff from the legislature to join and industry stakeholders to participate. By taking no action on this bill today, CSLB remains the sponsor and in support of this bill, and CSLB can continue to work in good faith with the legislature and stakeholders on a responsible and lasting solution.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on SB 291?
Through the chair. I guess, Mark, if, as the board remembers, we had a lively discussion on this bill back, I think, at our December meeting. So I appreciate legislation amendments, and in the end, the bill is kind of like status quo at a year. But having the increased penalties for individuals and licensees not having workers' comp if they get caught, that's going to be, I think, a game changer. So appreciate CSLB and them taking our recommendations and point forward. That is it.
Thank you, Chair Mark. Any other board members? I'll make one quick comment too. Would it be Registrar scope? Would you be able to set up a workers' comp advisory committee? Would that be up to the board? Or would you be able to?
Yeah, we would absolutely be able to set up a stakeholder meeting, and the incoming chair may want to appoint 2 board members to a workers' comp advisory committee or continue what's already in place, but that'll be up to Miguel to decide.
And if we remember, in the past year, I appointed 2 members to the Workers' Comp Advisory Committee, Vice Chair Galarza and Lex Chair Barton. So I think having that committee, it has been very helpful.
I think that's a good choice. All right, thank you. Seeing no board member comments, or is there any comments from the body? In public? All right, seeing none, and I assume, Council Ken, there's no vote required on this.
No vote required.
Thank you, sir. All right, now moving on to item 1D, SB 779 Archuleta. An analysis for this bill can be found in the board packet on page 119. SB 779 is currently pending the Assembly Business and Professions Committee. Ms. May, can you provide a brief update?
Thank you, Member Barton. SB 779 is the last board-sponsored bill on our agenda today. This bill would establish or increase minimum civil penalties, also known as enforcement fines, that accompany citations. This bill has not changed substantively from the board's original proposal. However, staff are requesting your approval today on a substantive amendment. This proposed amendment is included in the bill analysis on page 121. So staff is asking the board to consider an increase to the reserve fund cap from 6 months to 12 months. Contractors law currently requires the board to maintain its reserve at a level not to exceed approximately 6 months of authorized expenditures. The purpose of a reserve fund cap is to ensure that CSLB does not collect more revenue than it needs to support its licensing and enforcement functions. Extending the cap to 12 months will provide flexibility to proactively respond to emergencies and fulfill CSLB's consumer protection mandate should license renewals decrease due to a recession or an economic downturn. CSLB is projected to have 6.7 months or 50 million in reserve by July 1, 2025, which is above the 6-month threshold. This is not unique to CSLB. There has been a recent effort by the legislature and the Department of Consumer Affairs to eliminate individual program reserve caps or to increase them to 24 months. 2 DCA programs that are undergoing sunset review this year are either having their caps increased to 24 months or eliminated altogether. It's my understanding that once these 2 programs eliminate or increase their individual reserve caps, CSLB will be only one of 2 DCA programs that has a 6-month reserve cap. I think there's maybe 34 or 39 programs under DCA, so one of the last ones. So given the size of CSLB's reserve fund when compared to other smaller licensing programs, staff felt that 12 months would be a sufficient increase instead of the 24 months granted to other DCA programs. Additionally, if CSLB exceeds its current reserve cap as is anticipated next fiscal year, an increase to the cap reduces the possibility that CSLB will be asked to make a loan to the general fund, which happens to special fund entities like CSLB during budget shortfalls. So this request to amend SB 779 is not related to the anticipated revenue from increasing citation minimum fines, which in itself would not meaningfully impact the fund reserve. Rather, this amendment to contractors law would support CSLB's effective use of resources to provide the highest level of consumer protection alongside DCA programs that are also making this change. It should be noted that CSLB's highest fund balance reserve was 7.8 months in fiscal year 2007 and 2008. So increasing the reserve cap does not change how much revenue CSLB takes in. Rather, it just ensures that CSLB can continue to use its resources to improve existing services in furtherance of consumer protection. So with the board's approval today, hopefully staff can request the author to add this proposed amendment to SB 779. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on SB 779 or the proposed amendment?
I have a question. The one question I have to the chair is if you have more than 6 months, at 12 months, which is fine, if you're not at that 12-month, not hitting that goal, is there any consequences? Because it seems like we're hitting the 6 months and there's no problems. But now we're going to 6 more months. Is there an issue with that? Because usually if you don't hit it, they're going to be like, why do you have it then?
It's not so much a goal to make it to 12 months. It's just that we're going to exceed 6 months. So it'd be nice to be able to change that in statute. It just provides a little extra cushion in essentially our rainy day fund. I don't think we're gonna probably get to 12 months
I think
at any.
the only reason I was saying it is because I know when we have the 6 month and we're a little short of the 6 months, it becomes an issue. When we're talking about it, it gets brought up as we're at this level, we're trying to get to that level, we want to have 6 months, we don't have, we have 4.5 or 5. And that's something that gets brought up. I just want to make sure that if we're trying for 12, it's not something that's all. I understand the point of the 6 months, 12 months of having that extra money to use the way we need to use it, but I just want to make sure there's no repercussions on the other side by not getting to that quota. That's exact point. Good point. So, yeah, I just putting it out there.
Good point. Any further board member comments or questions?
I've got a question.
Sir.
Did I hear correctly that there are some other DCA programs that either have no cap or a 24-month cap? And that did I hear correctly that those programs that have either no cap or 24 or higher cap are sometimes asked to make loans to the general fund when there are additional funds and or the state needs?
Sometimes that happens. I have not gotten any word that we're being asked to make a loan to the general fund, but it does sometimes happen. And by increasing the cap, it would lower that possibility for CSLB.
Got it.
It's rare. It's rare.
Thank you. In my opinion, I think once we get close to 10 months, or if we ever get to that point, we need to start thinking about how our income coming in versus income going out. And at that point, we need to be hiring more staff to tackle all the needs. And so like, it's that kind of balance. It's good to know, like I said earlier, when I first joined the board, we were at 1 month reserves. So that was a little bit more scary. And now we're at 6.7, which we're 0.7 of a month above our current cap. But so what, speaking on Board Member Joseph stated, is at that point in time, that 0.7 could have been a loan to the general fund because we are over our current cap. So by increasing our cap to the 12 months, we should be okay. Because in my opinion, as a board, we need to always look at these quarterly meetings and see where we're at, and then in the end, fill these positions going forward. So thank you.
Yeah, really a quick comment. Our thought is that we're receiving licensing fees. Mainly, we're supported by renewal fees. We want to use those to the best of our ability to support protecting the public and the professionalism of the industry. And as Chair Mark said earlier, we have a study that will be conducted by Sac State that may well recommend the need for additional enforcement staff. Steve Bro mentioned we only have 27 proactive investigators for 58 counties. And so this just gives us the flexibility to prepare for that. Should we have a study that comes out and would support additional staff, there's a process you can use to obtain additional staff, but you need to be able to show you have the revenue to support that staff.
Question, does the study include a list of priorities? What would rank as what initiative to tackle first, whether it be adding more staff or spin or?
Yeah, it will help us to prioritize our resources. The one thing we did talk about when we're complicated, but we also have a need at CSLB to upgrade or replace our legacy information technology system. And so that will be expensive as well. So that's something that the board will be involved in the future about prioritizing the resources. Right now, we're in pretty good shape. It's not our goal to get to 12 months, but it is our goal to have sufficient resources to meet our needs going forward.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
Just to piggyback off of Chair Mark's comments, I think it's great that we can get to a 12-month or 10-month revenue, but making sure that we have the staff to enforce all these bills that we're actually in place. And it's good to have legislation, but it's not any good if you can't enforce it. And so, not to just have the benchmark of getting to there, but actually utilizing those funds. So thank you for that comment.